Okay, I'm not really sure why my video's not working tonight. Probably have to update something in my computer. But anyways, there's some notes I wanted to um, make about the writing assignment number one. As I was reading through the discussion forum, I noticed that in the APA format, there are a lot of things still missing. And it's really important to nail down your APA format because these courses, LACC 101 and 102 are designed for or as a prerequisite into your major. So that knowing when you go into your major, you are expected to know exactly what to do with APA format, exactly know what to do with references, exactly know what to do with in-text citations, so that instructors have no need to go over this stuff because you are already expected to know these things. So please check the essay examples, check APA sites. Word document offers an APA format. Excuse me. And not only that, there's a video by Maddie Lowen that goes over step by step what should be included in the APA format. So if you have any questions, please go through that. Use the Writing Center. Check in with me. So a couple of things that I've noticed that are still coming up is title. Your title should not be writing assignment number one. It needs to reflect the main idea of your topic. So for example, GMOs cause GMOs and eyesight deficiency. That is a title that's going to reflect, you kind of have an idea that you are going to be discussing eyesight and their connection with GMOs. So keep that in mind with your title. Running head needs to be written correctly. So it's, running head ... and all in capital letters. And then you'll notice in the next pages, subsequent from your title page, your only thing that will be on there is the actual running head in all caps. And the purpose for that is for the American Psychology Association. They use that as part of their search engine, so that when they're looking for other research papers, they'll do a Google search with those titles that reflect what they need to read. But so anyways, that's just a component that needs to be completed in the APA format. Abstract. There might be some confusion with abstract and audience analysis. They are two different things. You are not required to write an abstract in 102. It's mostly because your page length is short. We're going to stay under 5 pages, so there's no need for an abstract. With the audience analysis, that is placed at the end after your references page. An audience analysis is for me and for this class alone, and it's considered an appendix, which goes after your references sheet. So those are two different things. Let's see, what else have I noticed? In-text citation is missing. So if you do not have your in-text citation in your actual essay, you are plagiarizing, which is a huge no-no. And most of the time, it's just accidental. You didn't realize you didn't have it, you forgot, whatever the case is, it can't happen, because then it's basically saying those are your words and that's your information and your idea, which it's not if you're taking it from another source. So if you're using it right from your references sheet, you're citing a source, that needs to be properly cited in your text, which means, there's the parentheses, you have the last name of the author and the year it was published, and it goes right along with whatever quote, summary, paraphrase that you are citing. So in one of the exercises, I believe it was in week 1, we talked about, it was an exercise where you get to work on signal phrases. And so a signal phrase is letting the reader know, hey, there's outside information coming in to my into my essay. So you might see, like, according to James, right? So according to is like a signal phrase, and James is the author's last name, and then you would have in parentheses the year, right? 2015, and then you have the quote. Or you might say, it's argued that whatever this argument you're going to say, and then at the end of that, you'll have in parentheses, James, comma, 2015. So whatever outside information you use, it needs to be properly sourced with the signal phrase and have it all put together so that your reader knows this is outside information, this is not my idea, but I'm using it to back up my idea. So if you have questions, please use the Writing Center. Please check in with me and say, am I properly citing my source? Do I have my signal phrase? Do I have the right information? Is this how it should look? And you can also use an APA writing guide or use the links underneath the resources in our Foxtail site. It's really important that you start working on it and practicing incorporating it, because again, moving forward into your major, you are going to be using it for almost every assignment. So it's important that you know how to do that. Okay, so moving out of APA, I'm just going to jump into page length. I just want to remind you that the page length is 1 to 2 pages. It's written in the writing assignment guidelines. I just want to make that clear. And then I'll move into audience analysis, which is going to connect us with our thesis. So I'm seeing a lot of vague audience analysis that it's saying, my audience is anyone interested in GMOs and their effects on their bodies. That's huge. Anyone is vague. I'm looking for more specifics, like my audience is college students interested in knowing, the effects that GMOs could have on their long-term health. My audience is our family members who are struggling with diabetes, and I'm trying to make a connection to GMOs and how if they change their eating habits, they will be able to get off their diabetic medication. That's specific. Low-income families. People have written like low-income and middle-income families. Well, that's too vague, because the way you would speak to low-income families and the information that they might need will be different than speaking to middle-income families. So you can already see if you choose one or the other, you're going to narrow your scope even further and be able to come up with a more specific thesis. Farmers that will benefit from choosing to be a non-GMO certified farm, or farmers that are specifically focused on being organic. Those are specific scopes that you want to zone in on, because it directly relates to your thesis. If your audience is college students wanting to understand the relationship between GMOs and long-term health, your thesis parameters and the evidence that you can choose there's more to play with, because they're already college students are well-read. They question, right? They're supposed to be critical thinkers, and so they're going to want strong academic evidence to support your claim. If you're choosing to focus on families that are, your family that is struggling with diabetes, then they're going to want more personal stories of how people have chosen to eat a clean diet, have been able to lose weight and to get off their diabetic medication, right? So do you see how choosing your audience is key because it helps you develop your thesis and the evidence that you will use to support your thesis. So just knowing that those two need to go hand in hand when you're starting the brainstorming process. Okay, so again, tailoring your audience, it's very important. It needs to be specific. So that's what I mean when I say specific. It has to have like a set group, not just anyone interested in GMOs. That's too broad. It needs to be specific. And if you have questions, if your audience is specific enough, please check in with me. Okay, so getting into our thesis, we were talking about how they go hand in hand. But a thesis is a main idea that includes your personal take on the statement. So if I were to say GMOs can help, eating an organic diet can help reduce or eliminate diabetes. Why? That's just a statement, right? Eating an organic diet can help reduce or eliminate diabetes. Great. Anyone could write that. But why do you believe that to be true? I believe it to be true because there's evidence that show a direct correlation to an organic diet cleansing the body to eliminate the need for medication to self-regulate, sugar levels. Okay, well now we have a personal perspective, right? So therefore it is a thesis because it's a statement and it's my perspective on it. So those two together will let you know, okay, this is what I'm going to choose to focus on how eating clean will help the body cleanse itself of junk or, detox, and we'll begin to self-regulate. So now my essay is solely focusing on my perspective and defending it, right? So another example is like that I saw a student write about eyesight. So if you are choosing to say eating an organic, having an organic diet will help improve eyesight. Well, that's wonderful because then you're talking, okay, so that's a statement, but why? What is it about clean eating that creates better eyesight? Or you can even flip it around, how GMOs will speed up the process of, degenerate eyesight or retinas or there's information about how GMOs speed up the process of aged eyesight. Oh, interesting. Okay, so again, that's a statement, but why do you believe that to be true? Answering that in your thesis will move it from a statement to a thesis because you are now focusing on proving your perspective to be true. And how are you going to do that? So those are the things that I really want you to focus on as you begin to write your final writing assignment, which is kind of why I wanted to work on it for 3 weeks, is, baby steps. You're kind of figuring out who your audience is, what's your thesis, what is a thesis statement? There's statements, but what is a thesis statement? A thesis statement has that main idea, which everyone seems to kind of dance around and they're figuring it out, but your personal perspective on it is what moves it from a statement to a thesis statement. So again, checking that first paragraph and figuring out, do I have a thesis statement or is it just a statement? And how am I going to prove that in my body paragraphs? So that is what I want you to work on this week as you're working on your final draft. And please check in with me. Say, is this a thesis statement? And, I'm planning to support it with, your 4 to 5 topic sentences to support it. And you're trying to prove your thesis statement to be true, meaning your why component. Your personal perspective is what you're trying to prove. Not just that eating organic will increase your eyesight, but the why pieces. you're proving the why pieces with your evidence, whether it's stories, anecdotes, academic references, but all your evidence is geared towards proving your why to be true. And again, remember, your evidence needs to coordinate with your audience. So if your audience is a family member, they might not be interested in medical data. They might want to know personal stories, accounts that accounts of, you can find that in medical journals of stories, like Reader's Digest, TED Talks, find those personal stories that they might resonate with. So knowing what would my audience want to hear to understand my perspective. We're not proving, we're not asking them to agree with you. You're just asking them to understand your perspective. So keep that in mind as you're kind of juggling all of these pieces, your rhetorical choices. And let's see, what's something else I want to talk about? Page length, audience, thesis, keeping it all together. Oh yes, speaking to your audience. Okay, so your audience analysis is for me. It's so that I understand who you're speaking to. So as you're creating this description of, college age student, they're educated, they like to question things, they like to understand the process, they're motivated by academic sources. Okay, that's great. That's helping me understand who you're speaking to. So when you go to write your paper, there's really no need to give a background of GMOs if they already know what GMOs are. Does that make sense? So giving a history of where they came from, and they already know that, right? If you're telling me that they're college age, they're educated, they have a knowledge base about GMOs, then you don't need to write the history of where GMOs started and what exactly they are. That you might need to start with that for your rough draft or even just your brainstorming session, but you have to think about, what does my audience know and what do I need to tell them? Because if they already know that information, there's no need to include it in your essay. You're going to just straight go forward and think about what do they need to hear and start from there. So again, if you're focusing on GMOs and eyesight, right, they might not understand that relationship. So you can already start speaking to them as if they know that information. If there's specific jargon or words that they already know and maybe I don't know, put that in your audience analysis, because then you're already speaking that jargon and using those acronyms that your college student already knows, but maybe I don't know. So you put that in your audience analysis. So again, remember, audience analysis is for me to understand who you're speaking to, and your essay is not speaking to me. You are speaking directly to your audience. So you're talking directly to your family members. You're talking directly to those college students. You're talking directly to those farmers. So that's where your rhetorical choices come in, and you need to think about. So remember, when you are writing your paper, you're speaking to your audience. So word choice, voice, all of those things are part of your rhetorical choices that need to coordinate with your audience. So if you're talking to family, then write as if you're speaking to your family. If you're talking to farmers, then speak to the level of the farmers. If you're talking to college students, speak to the level of college students. Just like if you were speaking to your boss, you would change your voice and your tone and your word choice as if you're speaking to your boss. So those, your voice and your audience analysis, they go hand in hand. Your academic sources or your evidence and your audience, they go hand in hand. So know that your paper and your audience need to be in sync. So constantly thinking about, as I'm writing, does this relate to my audience? As I am choosing my evidence, is this something my audience would relate to or understand? Is this above their education, below their education, right at their level? So constantly, that's what you need to keep your audience and your essay hand in hand, and they're in constant relationship with one another. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. As you are finalizing your writing assignment number 1, please connect with me, ask me specific questions, and I'm happy to get back. Use that Writing Center. It is free. Keep writing, tweaking, honing in on what it is that you want to say, your message, and why. Proving your why is very important. For next week, you will be working on your rough draft number 2, which is persuasive. You are going to be seeking a change that you want. So as you are working on that, again, connect with me if you have questions, and I will be around this week. All right, have a good week. Bye.